on a daily basis. And we have to be able to overcome our barriers. So let's look at it for a moment. What is a barrier? Oh, by the way, if you want to call into the show, you have any questions about barriers or what have you, the call-in number is 347-850-1386. That's 347-850-1386. So if you have a question about barriers, feel free to call in. Right? So today we're going to talk a little bit about barriers and how they can impact us. Now, barriers are oftentimes immovable objects that get in our way, and a lot of people don't realize what those barriers are sometimes. And so we have to kind of be aware of what the barriers are that can prevent us from getting to where we want to get to in life. So the first barrier that I talk about in my book is interpersonal barriers. Because if you have a stink attitude, that is a barrier. And that will oftentimes prevent you from getting to where you want to get to in life. You have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to be likable, right? You have to be able to integrate yourself into people's lives. Oftentimes employers, when they interview folks, a lot of times they're really interviewing folks to see if you're a good fit for their team. And if you're not a good fit for their team, they're not going to hire you. And therefore, that could be considered a barrier. And so therefore, we don't want those barriers to adversely affect us, right? So it's very, very important that we be polite. In fact, in my workshops, a lot of times, I always tell folks, you have to be able to smile on a dime, right? That means that when you meet people, regardless of how you're feeling, whether you're in a bad mood or you had a bad night or what have you, you have to be able to say, hey, good morning, how are you? How was your weekend, right? Hey, what's going on, Carmen? Right, so it's very, very important that, we have a very good, positive attitude in the workplace. Because you don't know how it could adversely affect you down the road. Believe it or not, if you have a stink attitude, people don't want to work with you. And believe me, the first opportunity an employer gets to let somebody go, lay them off, or fire them because they have a bad attitude, they're going to get rid of you. When I used to be a store manager, with AT&T. I used to manage my store on 47th and 5th Avenue, the crown jewel of AT&T's, their flagship store on 5th Avenue. And I had an employee who had the stinkest attitude imaginable, right? And I knew that I had to get rid of him. And so the first opportunity I had to let him go, I did so. Why? Because he had a stink attitude. So if you have a stink attitude, you won't get far in this life. Interpersonal skills can be a barrier. You have to be able to get along with people. They have to like you, right? And you're not sacrificing yourself by being nice to someone. You're not sacrificing anything by saying good morning to someone. I mean, sometimes people use, the fact of being impolite as a mechanism for being impolite. That can only hurt you and adversely affect you in your employment life. So we want to make certain that we're very positive and very likable, right? So one of the other barriers, and we're going to talk about a variety of different barriers. And what I do is I kind of go in my book and I cover the barriers step by step. Some of the barriers that I talk about in my workshops, some of the barriers that I talk about to various folks that I assist, right? And the next barrier that I always talk about, and this is a big barrier, and integrity. I always ask my guys in my workshop, what is integrity? Right? And I get a lot of different answers on what integrity is, doing the right thing, this and that. Well, integrity is really doing the right thing when no one is watching, right? I recently saw an article, and this is so funny. I shop at Walmart all the time, right? I should have a job there as often as I'm in Walmart, right? And I just saw an article where a police officer got arrested at Walmart, in the Walmart parking lot, because you know how you have that scanner where you scan, merchandise, right? And I know a lot of people are tempted, because you figure like nobody's watching, right? So you might not scan one or two items, right? And you figure, no one's looking, and you put it in a bag and you walk out the store. And that's not to say that people don't get away with doing that. You might be unlucky, and that particular day people are actually watching, because there are cameras. If you ever watch closely, there are cameras right above the scanners that are actually watching people. Hey, what's going on, Angel? What's going on, Mark? Right? There are people that are there are people who are watching in those cameras to see if people are scanning all their merchandise. So anyway, a cop happened not to scan a couple of items, right? And he went out to the parking lot and he got arrested. Now, we're talking about a cop now. He lost his job, right, over like two or three items that he failed to pay for at Walmart. So this is just to let you know that Big Brother's always watching. You have to have a certain amount of integrity, even when nobody's watching. And even though you may not feel like paying for all the merchandise at Walmart, and even though you might feel as though, hey, I can get away with it, they're not going to notice. People are watching, right? And so you don't want to walk out of Walmart, intentionally not paying for something. That's called integrity. Doing the right thing, even when nobody is watching, right? And you don't know when people are watching. There are cameras everywhere, right? How many times you watch eyewitness news and you see cameras and people in front of people's homes, on the corner, cameras that you don't even know that are there. They're watching you. So you want to make certain that you're always doing the right thing, right? Another barrier that a lot of people face is professionalism, right? And I attribute professionalism with people who are, how you conduct your business. That's what professionalism is. Professionalism is kind of like the other day I was someplace with my son, and I told him to remove his hat, right? I told him you don't wear hats indoors. And the woman was shocked because she was like, oh my God, hats drive me crazy. I'm so glad you're teaching your son, he shouldn't wear a hat. And, and I was taught that by my grandmother. You don't wear a hat indoors, right? And so I teach that to my son. You don't wear no hats indoors. Take your hat off when you walk into a building, right? And there are a lot of guys that don't do that. There are a lot of guys that weren't taught that. So we have to teach our children, professionalism, what professionalism consists of. Professionalism is acknowledging people. Good morning, hello, how are you? Professionalism is how you conduct your business, all right? Making certain that, when you go to work, if you're required to dress professionally, you do so. You wear a shirt and a tie. You're on time, right? You do the job effectively, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who go to work on a daily basis and they don't do the job effectively, right? They kind of half-ass it. And so they're not professional. And you should know employers are watching. I mean, you may not think that the employer is watching you. You might think that you can get away with something by not doing something. But the reality is that employers are watching, all right? And they may not bring it to your attention right away. I know a lot of times when I've worked as a manager and I see people doing things wrong, I may not get on them right away, but believe you me, they are tucking it in their back pocket and bringing it out when necessary. So they are tracking things. They are tracking your professionalism, how you do your job, right? Another barrier that people can face oftentimes is initiative, right? People not taking it upon themselves to do the things that they need to do, right? If you have a job to do, an employee shouldn't have to tell you to do the job. You should be able to take the initiative and do the job. Oftentimes, we know when things need to be done. And a lot of times, we don't want to take it upon ourselves. We don't want to show initiative. You should know initiative is one of the things that will help you get ahead in business a lot quicker than anything else. Because employers like folks that take it upon themselves to do their job without having to be told. When I was at AT&T, a lot of times I had employees that unless I told them to do their job, they wouldn't do it. And they oftentimes thought that I wasn't paying attention. And I don't know why, because there's a camera on the sales floor that I'm able to look at in my office, and I can see if people were actually doing their job on the sales floor. So, and then when I don't see people doing their job on the sales floor and I go out on the sales floor and all of a sudden everybody gets busy, right? So my point is, you know, you want to make certain that you take initiative, right? You shouldn't have to be told to do your job. You should just do it, right? Believe me, employers are watching, right? And, you know, this is how you get your raises, right? This is how you get promoted, right? You want to show initiative and take things on upon yourself. Another barrier that a lot of people face is dependability and reliability. Dependability, it's probably the number one reason why people lose their jobs is because of lateness and absenteeism. It is the number one reason. Numero uno. Primero, right? I'm working on my Spanish, right? Number one, employers expect you to be there on time, ready to work, right? So if you're not there, you're not on time, you're going to have a problem. They are watching. When you come in late, they're going to know. And they may not say nothing. I mean, I work with people that come in late, you know, and it's not the end of the world, but there are jobs where they do take it very seriously if you come in late. When I worked at Verizon, they expected you to be at your desk and ready to open up your key at a certain time. And they made a big deal about it. And I mean, there are other jobs that don't make a big deal about it. But just because one job doesn't mean another job won't. So we always have to kind of embed it in us to make certain that we have dependability and reliability, right? And this is something that has to be embedded in us. You know what I mean? That this is something that you want to do on a daily basis. No one should have to tell you to get to your job on time. No one should have to tell you to be reliable and someone that you can depend on, right? Because let's keep it real. If you're not dependable, you're not reliable, you're not going to probably have that job very long. That is a major barrier. So we want to make certain that we work on that. We're prepared to do the job. I remember a few years back, you know, living in New York during Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy hit New York like a storm, right? We weren't prepared for Sandy. It knocked out the train service. We had floods. I remember there was a tree downed on my block when I lived in the Bronx. And during Sandy, right, where, I mean, it shut the city down, I was at work at 8 a.m. on the day of Sandy. I drove to work. I opened up the office. I was the first one in the office. You know, I had my coffee, had the paper. I was, you know, had the office open, right? And I called my boss, and my boss was like, "You're in the office?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in the office." And he was like, "Get out of here. It's impossible. Like, the train isn't working." I was like, I got in my car and came to work. It's no big deal, right? And I opened the office at 9, right? I was back in my bed by 9:50. You know, he told me, "Listen, close the office. Any clients that come through the door, give them credit for the day," which is what I did. I closed the office, went back home, and I was back in bed by 9:40. But nevertheless, I was in the office at 8 o'clock and I opened up the office. And my boss was shocked. And my boss, he lived in Queens. So, I mean, he wasn't going to make it into the office. So I could just tell you, dependability and reliability goes a long way, right? Another barrier that, and this is probably the biggest barrier, and I don't have a problem telling folks, this is something that we all should be mindful of. And this is something that I just told some of my clients in one of my workshops recently. We have to dedicate ourselves to a willingness to learn, lifelong learning. Sometimes as we get older, you know, we feel as though, especially when we, you know, have a job, we're making money, right? We kind of put education on the back burner. We kind of put, you know, feeding our mind on the back burner, and that is the absolute wrong thing you want to do. You want to make certain that you dedicate yourself to lifelong learning. And I don't care what you learn. I mean, to be very honest with you, it could be something that you're just thinking about doing, right? Like right now, you know, every Thursday I try to improve my Spanish, you know, not because I need Spanish to do my job, but because, you know, just for my own betterment, I want to get really fluent in Spanish. So it's something that I want to work on, right? I oftentimes, read books on